Hi, everyone. Welcome to the DN Convo series. I'm Sandil Srinivasan, your host. And today I have a very old friend and an acquaintance from the escrow world. I'm very excited to have him today. Vaibhav Tambe, who's the CEO of Transbank. Vaibhav, hi. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, hi. Thanks, Sandil. Glad to be here.
So, Vaibhav, today we want to kind of talk about how technology and regulation really shape the whole transactions in the BFSI sector. And we want to focus a lot about something that I know you and I are really passionate about, which is the world of escrows. I kind of would like to start off and talk about how is technology helping shape the future of escrows and how are banks today kind of leveraging that?
Sure. And I think it's been a while. I think probably we've been exchanging ideas and products and all for last what 6, 7 years, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Probably what we had missed out when we were discussing that point right, was the amazing story of Indian lending ecosystem, right? I think um, probably this decade, we would see another exponential growth, especially in terms of lending, right? And why? It's not because any of the political reason. It's about the complete ecosystem maturing, right? You must have seen how a simple but the grand event of Ram Mandir did to the economy of Ayodhya, UP, and India, right? I think uh, India, of course, is that way poised for a very, very strong growth in lending. And typically, if you see lending, unsecured lending, you and me would have never have, gone for unsecured lending. RBI is against it, right? Regulatory, guidelines or master circulars, etc., right? So that leaves us, or that takes us to the very important point where how do you assess the cash flows, right? How do you
Yeah.
track the cash flows? And the moment you get into some kind of a lending where you need to see the cash flows, uh, probably one of the most important or most crucial part is this particular banking account called as escrow, right? I mean, there could be multiple names to that, but idea is and there could be, of course, very exciting use cases, but I think the most exciting part why banks and especially shadow lenders, NBFCs, are not able to scale this business because the technology was not there. It was all run on the rudimentary Excel or some kind of a system, right?
Yeah.
While so I think that's why probably it needs that nudge, right? And the business is they say that the business is here to stay. I'm gonna say that this business is here to grow
True.
exponentially.
Yeah.
So it
Absolutely.
can only happen with technology. That's like scientifically proved.
Yeah. I'm seeing that trend as well. In fact, when we talk about some of the escrow arrangements that exist today, and we completely we ushered in this whole era of digital commerce, which created a whole new flavor of escrows that did not exist maybe 5 or 10 years back. And it's very interesting when you talk to your peers and colleagues in most banks, how do you manage escrows? And the answer still has been email and Excel. Probably
Absolutely.
we're seeing that change in the last few years. So it's very interesting that arrangement or a structure like that now is growing so exponentially and becoming not just high value, low volume, but high volume, low value. And technology is at the heart of some of that modernization. Um, are you seeing any specific areas or industries where this is really creating a new push?
So as I mentioned, right, lending, of course, and I would say we have not even scratched the surface in terms of use of escrows or other similar products when it comes to lending, right? There are, let's say, 100 odd NBFCs, and you and me, we have worked with some of these NBFCs in the past, partnership we had. Uh, but I think probably the business will scale in lending, by huge number. There are, of course, use cases around marketplaces. I think conceptually what happens is whenever there are more than two parties doing a transaction and they need to actually put some rules, right? So not too many guys understand the merger and acquisition space, because that's a very transactional or very unique space. Not many of the transactions happen,
Yeah.
but areas like real estate where this could be put to use at a large scale, right? Imagine, let's say, I don't know about Bangalore, but Mumbai, a small 1 BHK in heart of the city is like
Yeah.
2 lakh rupees of rent, and deposit would be around, let's say, 5 to 6 lakhs. Now, all these things are not under escrow today, and there's so much of risk, right? And I've
Yeah.
experienced myself as a what you can say, somebody who lets out the property. All that money is at stake, and sometimes that amount runs into, let's say, tens of lakhs, right? So, or maybe 5 lakh or something, right? Why should that amount be kind of at the mercy of the
Yeah.
guy who's actually uh, taking the flat on rent? And that's the one use case I'm talking about. Look at the insurance use case, right? You're basically going for an insurance and the cashless is not there. There are so many retail use cases where this could then explode further, right? While we don't see that moment happening right now because of the, what you can say, various limitations industry has. But I think when those use cases come into the picture, I think this will become a norm. And you travel frequently to US, it's a norm in US to do escrow, or even
Yeah.
in UK to do escrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see a convergence of, for instance, you talked about real estate and there's this whole drive towards tokenized assets, especially in the real estate world. Do you see a convergence of tokenization and crypto coming into the mix with the whole digital escrow movement as well?
See, honestly, uh, if you look at the global landscape, and if you look at the use cases around the globe, uh, probably that maturity or that requirements are quite evident, right? We've been asked about that. But I think what I love about Indian ecosystem is RBI actually takes almost complete control about the things, right? And because some of this technologies what you spoke about, uh, maybe because of the inherent nature, and of course, kind of disadvantage of using the decentralized controls. Sometimes the regulator may not be comfortable. So I think in India, probably the time is not right for that those kind of transaction. It should be there. What our government did amazingly well is the launch of CBDC, right?
Yeah.
Uh, CBDC actually is a programmable money. You have a color of money concept, right? So you will be able to basically allocate the money for a specific purpose. So I think what I see probably is in next couple of years, there will be an intersection where you actually use these products like CBDC, and then you'll have intersection where the corporate banking or wholesale banking products will actually start working. Imagine we've combined, let's say, UPI and some other retail products and built it in the escrow layer today, right? So similar to that, I think will happen uh, with CBDC of India, not crypto. uh, I don't think next 10 years or 5 7 years it'll come to what ideally should have been the decentralized tokenization, and then of course
Yeah.
assimilate or do whatever you want, and then there's a back end escrow. That will happen globally. India, I'm very skeptical about it, and I am also not I'm not very happy about that structure. Sometimes it's misused, that's why.
I understand. I understand. Yeah. Old ships turn slowly.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about the regulator. You mentioned RBI, and I mean, of course, we have been big fans of how RBI has driven some of the initiatives in the last, I don't know how many decades we have been monitoring this market. But this whole escrow arrangement requires like strict compliance. At the same time, that compliance shouldn't hurt user experience, shouldn't hurt the whole customer journey, the speed of operations. That's a fine line. What has been your experience with the regulator and the role that the regulator is playing and how they're driving the financial institutions?
So I think probably we were the lucky fintech entrepreneurs who had extensive 13 14 years of experience each, and handling some of the communication with RBI, right? So there was something called as nodal account or some other type of internal accounts what banks used to offer. And what RBI quickly understood is that because of the misuse and because of a lot of other issues with the structure, any business where the aggregation happens. Last 1.5 to 2 years, they've mandated, or rather 2.5 to 3 years, they've mandated it to do it through escrow, right? So all the payment aggregation business now necessarily will have to do through escrows, right? P2P or NBFC, peer-to-peer lending NBFCs. Your PPI instruments, prepaid card issuers, right? PPI. So, in a sense, what RBI, probably believes, and I don't know how exactly to put into that word. I'm not that, great in terms of vocabulary, but I think because when we interact with them, when I used to interact as a banker, and when we interact with few more industry leaders, I think RBI is very clear. Look, the rules or the programmable logic, what you want to build has to be built in system, right?
Yeah.
And you have to follow the norm. Two most important aspects they want us to take care of. I mean, when I mean to us, it's ecosystem players, like we all are banks, right? One is of course the source of money, the trail, and second, the destination, right? If we solve these two problems,
Yeah.
uh, it's very easy then to scale the business, right? We have seen some structures in the market here in Bangalore. I don't know if it's a Bangalore phenomena or Delhi phenomena, but we have seen structures where they create, some virtual escrow or digital escrow.
Yeah.
All this is like probably cardinal sin, right? I think the whole purpose of escrow is actually to follow a particular rule and open the account with the proper KYC and proper trail money in the bank account,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
cannot actually pull all the money into a particular master escrow and then distribute it as for your whims and fancies. And tomorrow, if something happens, I was a banker, and of course, compared to other banks, Indusin was not that very extremely fintech friendly bank. But I know a lot of fintech friendly banks also used to get so many complaints from police and all the other issues, and
Yeah.
instantly the account used to get frozen, right? For 1 rupee, for some even 1 rupee complaint, or maybe 50 rupees complaint, or 5,000 rupees UPI complaint, the entire account used to get frozen. Now
Yeah.
imagine there's a master escrow account where the entire ecosystem money is flowing in and flowing out. And imagine the one guy does a complaint, and
Yeah.
bankers do
That
not have
brings
any.
down the whole fintech
The
practically. Yeah.
point is, regulatory framework is very clear, right? There
Yeah.
have to be, you have to identify the source, you have to identify the beneficiary,
Yeah.
and the ownership of the escrow is extremely crucial. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why probably we all advocate banks to work very, very, meticulously on these 3 points.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see that. I see that happening as well from a technology standpoint. Technology is, of course, we can all be very creative in how we solve certain problems, but some of these things are not purely technology problems. They also go hand in hand with regulatory compliance, operations, and
Yes.
risk, and everyone need to kind of come together for that. A further topic on the whole discussion with the RBI and the whole regulatory framework around it. One of the things has been that the pace of innovation and the pace of regulation do not always go well with each other. What's been your experience with the regulator in terms of how quickly they advertise the intent to publish new regulation, and what kind of consensus building goes on within the banking community to establish that?
Uh, Honestly, when I was a banker, there were some attempts where we used to come together, and the IBA is one body, but we used to also all the leading private sector bank, including Indusin, we used to do that as a group and all. I don't think that happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, RBI, of course, is extremely sharp and extremely good in terms of identifying this. Probably they have quarterly audits, so anything to that matter typically stays in the gray area for 3 months or so, right? And then, of course, we see actions, and because these banks don't talk to each other, these banks actually develop systems in silos. They miss out this communication, right? And of course, uh, we've been a compliance first organization. More than tech, we actually work on compliance and regulatory clearances. So we of course try and understand and try to build model around that, and then maybe structure a product around it. Whereas the banks could be working on a use case where they first look at the let's say current account balance or some other advantage, and and then of course once they understand the overall value proposition, they look at creating a new product, which is of course a long journey for them, right? So I think probably the scenarios would evolve again and again, because India is actually, as I mentioned, going through a lot of innovation thing. I feel sometimes terribly, sad about banks. Not because I'm an ex-banker, or maybe because I'm an ex-banker,
Probably, yeah.
but I think a lot of actions are taken on the banks, rightly so. However, a lot of times banks are not at default, right? it's
Mm.
it's the it's the innovator or the startup, or whoever who's building that particular structure. So I think
Yeah.
RBI is very sharp, and I've seen so many, we all have seen so many instances where all these things were taken very seriously. There were bans on the fintechs, and there've been so many things going on in the market. You know about it also.
Yeah. No, but I think that sharpness has kind of propagated towards the banks as well. I'm
Yeah.
starting to see, at least in post-COVID, I'm seeing banks take some of this really, really seriously. While there are attempts to automate, there are definitely a lot of measures in place to protect that. I want to talk about a couple of other things. One of which I think you're extremely passionate about, and I know you've committed yourself with Transbank to doing some of that. If I rewind maybe 5 or 6 years back, when we were really small as an organization ourselves, we had this whole cash flow problems of unpaid invoices, and we would have customer commitments that would have to pay us on time, but they just wouldn't. And back in the day, this whole concept of escrow was just so painful. Escrow is a complex product for the layman, right? Understanding how to even open an account and facilitate the whole agreement and get multiple parties to, be a signatory to it. This was a pain for multiple reasons. Escrow, like I said, was complex, and I think pre-COVID, who is going to run around and sit and sign agreements, right? Now I think there's a whole shift post-COVID in terms of push towards paperless and digital, but also many fintechs like you in particular demystifying and making it simple and easy for an ordinary person to kind of understand that. What do you see as excitement in this area for the users who basically used to freak out when they hear the word escrow, and now it's kind of become simple and easy to
No,
manage?
I think I would just correct one thing, right? Used to freak out, they still freak out.
They do? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So and on an average, because we focus ourselves so much on lending escrows,
Hmm.
sometimes they are ready to let go on a particular transaction of co-lending transaction, which is very useful and very nicely stitched structure, and they do business correspondent or uh, uh, some kind of securitization deal, just because the process of opening co-lending escrow is too complex, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to blame any bank for that. It's probably the mindset and the experience they might have had probably an year ago, right?
Yeah.
uh, the the entire psyche of that particular lender or that particular fintech is that, boss, what is the fastest way out, because otherwise the business will go, right? So
Yeah.
they'll look at, let's say, instead of co-lending, why don't we go for business correspondent, like BC route. You'll have some maybe your book will not be built, but you'll get some revenue out of the arrangement, right? So I think that fear is still there.
Yeah.
uh, Primarily, we break those problems, even as a banker and even as an entrepreneur. We actually break this problem into several steps. So when you actually first broken this escrow problem, it went to 35, 36 different steps, right?
Right.
And
Remember
as a
that.
banker, I remember spending around 4 to 5 months with you guys, and then we solved the most important part, which we had at that point of time, was running the complete operations, right? Because you guys
That's
were expert in that, you had built it for another bank, so we quickly adopted that. But the first problem is actually not problem of the bank; it's a problem of multiple ecosystems there.
yeah.
So excitement is that problem segment keep on getting more and more granular,
Yeah.
and it's not about getting the digitally document e-signed or e-stamped. That's not the problem. The problem is getting the ecosystem to accept it, right?
Yeah.
I can always send a link to let's say Sandil and Anurag, and we can all sign the agreement. Doesn't matter. But whether the, let's say, banking that particular bank which is opening the account, whether they want to accept that particular e-stamp or e-sign is a big challenge, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I must have visited 50, 60, 70. I'll again visit for more 80 times these banks, right? Because we have to get this acceptance done at the bank's end, right?
Yeah.
And of course, banks also will have to be very careful because they are the owners when they do the
Yeah.
KYC. So they're rightfully what you can say, correct when they do this complete due diligence of the system, due diligence of the process, due diligence of the concept of e-sign itself, right?
Yeah.
We've been asked to give the entire detail about how the Aadhaar e-sign works, NSDL, whether it is accepted in the court of law, which courts, precedents, everything. Rightly so, right? So idea is not about technology, only technology over here. Idea is, of course, to get first of all the problem defined for the lender or for the uh, parties who want to, democratize or use escrow, and then go to these acceptance points, like trustees, for example.
Yeah.
You have to work with every trustee to get that acceptance of digital documentation. It's a very gradual, granular and gradual process. So it's very exciting, and of course, you feel like evangelist sometimes who's working
Yeah.
for no returns. But yeah, I mean there are other benefits of that also. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. In fact, this whole transaction banking space, I mean, escrow is one part of it, but the whole transaction banking space is kind of being modernized and revolutionized. I'm curious to know, I know you are at the heart of some of this. What are the innovations that are happening that you're seeing, and what are you seeing, as a trend for the next 2 to 5 years in terms of driving this adoption?
see, I think what will happen now is the process will now shift from your unsecured lending, where typically you're collecting some past historical data, and then you're going on because I think there have been very stringent rules around that, right? So process will
Right.
move to ongoing cash flow assessment, right?
Mm.
So suddenly what will happen is you'll see everything. There's a Copernicus effect kind of a jargon. I don't want to use that, but suddenly what you'll understand that entire thing is revolving around the customer's ongoing cash flow. How
Right.
good that particular, how was the last quarter? Did it happen as per the promised? So, and then of course, if you combine that with something like CBDC, where then tracking is easier,
Yeah.
then I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm really excited towards that. Second thing, of course, there are structures like ONDC, for example, right?
Right.
ONDC is again in a way democratizing various initiatives, including
Yeah.
ONDC for financial services. So over there again, we will see some standardization come and extensive use of the escrow structures. OCEN, which is Open Credit Enhancement Network, over there again, we will have some element of SOC. Because I think the when we talked about UPI growth, right, it was not banks, right? It was ultimate. Of course, banks were there as the rails, but the UPI entirely was driven by this Google Pay, Phone Pay, Paytm, and Amazon Pay of the world, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
similarly, the lending business also is moving towards origination from fintech. There are a lot of large LSPs which are there in the picture, and the whole scenario of these ecosystem players collaborating with each other will ultimately move from these structures. So and these structures will become very pivotal in P2P NBFCs at some point of time. But like X today, there are probably what 40-45x from the growth perspective in last 2.5 to 3-4 years, right? So while the lending grows exponentially, I would just tell you that that's my observation, or that's my reading from whatever limited conversation I've been having with lenders, be it banks, be it NBFCs. I think it will shift to assessing all the cash flows, and that's where I think the role of escrow accounts would be very, very crucial.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that is really where it is all. It's completely slated to grow. And finally, just to kind of wrap up, I know we've spoken a lot about this in the past as well, but I'm very excited by some of the things that you're doing. I'm curious to know, what are you kind of busy with for the next 12 months, and how is it going to help all of us?
So I think when we started, our again whole objective was how do we democratize to the last bank on the street, right? So today we work with around 22 banks around, which are like there on the platform or integration. There are another 20 we are conversing with. So we want to actually get every bank in next 12 months to be on there on the platform. including some of the PSUs, MNC banks have started coming on the platform. So idea is get every bank on the platform. Make sure that the acceptance of all these digital tools is there at the bank's end, right? And of course, when banks eventually grow their escrow or business, or their CASA eventually will
Right.
be grown. So banks are very happy to partner that way. And of course, when they grow their escrow business, they required somebody to manage their operations technology wise.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think
Thanks for
we want honestly everybody, every bank on the street, be it India. There've been some good global conversation happening, and good part about UPI story is that they have, it's kind of getting proven that India can lead in terms of
Yep.
technology innovation, especially in BFSI. So we can actually build this for the entire banking ecosystem around the world. That's the idea.
It's
And that's not for next 12 months. Maybe in
yeah.
next 12 months we'll look at every Indian bank. But yeah, I mean, organic leads are already there, and we would look at, let's say, 24 to 36 months for getting the global banks on the platform, solving the same problem, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting you mentioned UPI. I was recently in another country, a neighbor of ours, and we spent some time talking to some of the banks there. And there was a lot of digital commerce fraud to the point where the public does not trust online commerce at all. And the regulator went and spent like a year thinking about how do we solve this and came up with basically looked at India for inspiration on Nodal and came up with the equivalent of Nodal to basically say, I will only pay merchants when shipment is delivered and there is no opportunity to do a refund anymore. Until that point in time, the buyer can do a refund, no questions asked. So that is interesting. As you said, India can lead, and UPI has shown that. But there are a lot of other micro innovations, for lack of a better word, like Nodal, that don't get the limelight, but have really safeguarded all our interests, right, day in day out. So it's pretty interesting to see that.
Yeah, I think, see, UPI, what it did is it actually, typically you'll see the US products, in Apple, Microsoft, everywhere you'll see, right? So, and the way UPI is now visible everywhere, it's getting democratized day by day. A few countries, and
Yeah,
maybe it will take some more time, but and of course, even these brands, what US and other Japanese brands, they were anyways not built in a day. It took them probably tens of years to get to that level. So I think from day one we are clear that we want to build something like that for the enterprise business.
yeah,
And yeah, I think long journey, but excitement is always there, and happy to
yeah,
happy to collaborate always with the ecosystem.
absolutely. Something that keeps us awake at night and gets us out
Yeah,
of bed every morning.
absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks,
Great.
Vaibhav. Thanks for sharing your insight. It was great talking to you as always.
Yes, yes. Look forward. See you.
See you. Bye bye.